We all have notions of exacting revenge on those who have slighted us. Be those slights as petty as improper roadway etiquette, I'm looking at you, literally every F-150 driver to ever exist, or things of a more consequential nature. Most of us never follow up on these notions, however. We eventually lose interest in vengeance for any number of reasons. Anger is oftentimes fleeting, and most of us have things to do after all. But even if the anger at any given infraction does not dissolve in a timely fashion, even if that stupid truck lives rent-free in our head, we will still rarely actually enact any degree of vengeance. In these cases, it's not because we lack the motivation, it is more that we lack the means. Taking a dump on the hood of a truck is not the easiest thing to do, so we are content to simply revel in our fantasies. The Revenant is a film about an individual with both the motivation and the means to exact revenge, despite the fact that nature itself seems hell-bent on stopping him. Hugh Glass is nothing if not a capable individual, skilled in many things, most prominently survival. So skilled, in fact, that he can 1v1 a bear with nothing but a musket and a knife, mostly. Mr. Glass does come out on top of this matchup, but is not without cost. His victory comes at the expense of his entire body. The fur traders, being guided by Mr. Glass, do their best to tend to the man, but there is little medicine to be had for a bear mauling. The traders do what they can to bring our protagonist along on their journey, but as the trail proves more and more treacherous, it's abundantly clear that he must be left behind. The leader of the party is remiss to just leave Glass behind, and as such, offers additional pay to any individuals willing to stay behind with the protagonist, and offering assurances that those left behind will be returned to. One member of the party, Fitzgerald, accepts the offer, along with Mr. Glass's son and Jim Bridger, ostensibly the youngest member of the group of trappers. The bulk of the party departs, leaving the trio alone with the injured and immobile Hugh Glass. Now separated from the group, Fitzgerald thinks better of his desire to stay behind. He wants to leave this place, but is instead charged with keeping the protagonist alive. His solution is to offer Mr. Glass an opportunity to take the easy way out, an offer that Mr. Glass does not accept. Glass is instructed to blink if he wants to end things, but he keeps his eyes open for as long as he can before closing them. Fitzgerald interprets what is assuredly not a blink as a blink, and begins to smother Glass, only to be interrupted by Hawk, Hugh Glass's son. The boy is promptly slain by Fitzgerald, and Glass is buried and left for dead. Fitzgerald misrepresents the situation to his remaining companion, and the two leave the campsite with Glass in his grave. Hugh Glass still draws breath, and therefore he will still fight, however. He digs himself out of his grave and sets off after the man who slew his son, literally crawling after Fitzgerald. What follows is the crux of the film: Hugh Glass in search of his revenge. I'll spare you the description of the following events, 1, because I'm lazy, and 2, because even if I were to describe the events perfectly, such a description would fall short of how they are presented in the film. I know this is a hot take, but The Revenant is a very good movie. Go watch it. After an arduous journey, Fitzgerald and Glass find themselves in their final confrontation. I have it described in my notes thusly. The final fight in The Revenant is to doom metal, as an anime fight scene is to grindcore. If you aren't familiar with Electric Wizard or Pig Destroyer, I'm basically saying that this fight is very slow and brutal, whereas anime fights are more fast-paced and frantic. Suffice to say, it's a very satisfying fight. This fight ends with Glass getting the upper hand, but staying this hand before the final blow is struck. Instead of finishing Fitzgerald off, our protagonist instead happens upon a group of Native Americans. He slides the body of his foe into the water, allowing these individuals to finish him off. The film closes on Glass being visited by his deceased wife. He stares at her for a long moment. She stares back at him, before eventually walking off and ending the film. Clearly, this is a film about revenge, right? That is the entire plot of the movie. Glass taking his revenge on Fitzgerald. Critique over. Thank you for coming to my Revenant TED Talk. Okay, fine. There's more to this movie than simply a revenge power fantasy. The main source of dissonance for me between what I think the movie is trying to say and what I'm hearing the movie say is as follows. A line in the movie that indicates that revenge ought not be the focal point is, "Revenge is in the creator's hands." It's said more than once, so it must be important. I feel like the movie is trying to make the point that revenge is ultimately unsatisfying, and that by not dealing the killing blow, Glass rose above his desire for vengeance, and the point of the movie is actually related to the tenacity of humanity, or something of that nature. I would make the case that both revenge and tenacity are equally thematically relevant. At the end of the fight scene, it's clear that Fitzgerald has done so. He has done so very much at the hand of Hugh Glass. Just because Glass didn't land the killing blow does not mean that he didn't slay the antagonist. Fitzgerald was dead, regardless of whether or not the Native Americans showed up. There is a quote that's often attributed to Sun Tzu, but Google said that attribution is not accurate. Regardless of who said it, the quote goes as follows: "If you wait by the bend in the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by," essentially touting the virtues of patience over impetuousness and so on. I don't know if the writers of the movie had this quote in mind, but it sure seems like they did, because Fitzgerald's body literally floats down the river as Glass watches. The Revenant doesn't seem to be solely about revenge or perseverance, but more, it seems to be about revenge through perseverance. The journey that Glass goes on is impressive, inspiring, and so on. But that isn't the only focal point of the film. All of these examples of tenacity are bound together by the desire for revenge. Revenge that is in the end accomplished. Maybe not accomplished as the audience would expect at the end of a knife or the business end of a musket, but accomplished instead through sheer will. Sure, the knives and the musket help, but what is a knife if there is no one to wield it? Tenacity alone does not impart the whole meaning of the Revenant, because Fitzgerald was tenacious as well. Not to the same extent as Glass, but he also survived the elements and escaped the wilderness. He abandoned Glass not due to outright malice, but because he wanted to survive. Every motivation that the character had was born out of this instinct, the will to live. The difference between the two is that Fitzgerald was solely interested in self-preservation, whereas Glass wanted to survive for something. The desire for revenge is something that lives within all of us. Conventional wisdom would dictate that it's best practice not to indulge these impulses, but still, the desire for revenge can be a powerful motivator. Like all powerful things, this desire can lead to ruin or prosperity, depending on how it's used. This desire can cause us to endeavor to harm our foes, and while this may be satisfying in the short term, it is a slippery slope that can cause irreparable harm. Theoretically, a more reasonable course of action is to use these feelings as motivation to better oneself, and surpass those who have slighted you in every conceivable way. When the urge for revenge strikes, wait. Persevere, and wait alongside the bend in the river, because eventually, that tiny dick motherfucker and his F-150 will just float on by you.